Hello, I wanted to welcome you to our second session of the day, for BS 2000, the new Standardization Management System Standards. This session will provide an overview of the recently published standard on standardization, which is BS 2020, Standardization Management System Specification. A warm welcome to our speakers, John Clapworthy of SAE International and Kishore Chandarana of the MBDA Missile Systems. I will now hand over to our speakers to start the session.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So as Beverly said, this morning's presentation on BS 2000 will be given by myself, John Clapworthy, and Kishore Chandarana from MBDA. So if I can just take a few seconds to introduce myself. I work as part of the business development team for SAE International on the aerospace standards side. I've been involved with aerospace standards now for over 30 years, having previously worked for BSI Systems here in the UK, for ADS, which was formerly known as SPAC, and prior to that in the UK MOD. I currently chair the ACE-1 Aerospace Policy Committee within BSI, and I'm also a member of the Defence or DEF1 committee that wrote this standard. So if I hand over now to Kish to do a quick introduction before we move on.
Sure. Good morning, all. So my name is Kishore Chandarana. I'm the Group Head of Product Assurance Systems and Tools, and my responsibility also covers external standardization management at MBDA Missile Systems. I've got some 30 years experience in national and multinational businesses, largely engineering businesses linked with energy management, automation, and also weapons systems engineering. This experience covers effectively everything from the entire product life cycle, looking at design, development, test, quality, customer support, and continued improvement. So in my current role, I'm really responsible for delivering optimal processes, systems, tools, all to support product assurance across the entire business. The bigger chunk of the work within all of that also is delivering a best fit external standardization management system across the entire MBDA business. That's pretty much me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Kish. Okay, so the first section of this presentation is to talk about basically the concept for BS 22000 and also a little bit about the background of BSI's DEF1 committee. So I'll just move this out of the way. Right. So the defense or DEF1 is known as the Strategic Defense Standardization Management Committee. It was formed some 4 or 5 years or so ago. It operates within the BSI operational model, and its obligations are for transparency and consensus in line with any other BSI committee. And its remit is to support the defense industry, which now promotes civil as possible and military only as necessary where standards are applied within their organization. It's to promote standards as enablers for increased interoperability, to promote the use of extant or promulgated UK ratified standards, and also to promote the non-overprescription of standards. So the group itself comprises representation from DSTAN up in Glasgow, myself as a representative from SAE International. We have representation from Babcock, MBDA, BSI Systems, and of course BSI itself. So the task that DEF1 set itself was to provide a solution for industry partners to effectively and in a structured manner respond to standards in contracts, that's contracts between industry and the MOD, whilst understanding and effectively mitigating the related risks and cost overheads. And develop a British standard for covering standardization management system that delivers the standardization management benefits, identifies measurable criteria for effective standardization management, instills organization cultures and behaviors, and delivers vendor and supplier confidence. And so the benefits of derived directly from BS 22000 are enhanced product and service safety, quality and process, increased interoperability of the products, services and processes, improved governance and assurance, clear accountability and reduced risk, and that standards are continuously improved through the learning from experience. In other words, it's an iterative process, and the standard will be updated as we get feedback from the user. So some bullet points here about what BS 22000 does. It sets out the criteria for a standardization management system used by any organization, large or small, regardless of its activity, based on the principles of strong customer focus, motivation and implication of top management, process approach and continual improvement. It also aims to enable organizations to use a common approach and risk-based thinking to integrate its standardization management system with the requirements of other management systems. It aims to ensure the customer gets consistent, good quality products and services and brings business benefits. It also aims to enable organizations to claim compliance by self-determination and self-declaration, confirmation of its conformity by parties having an interest in the organization, confirmation of its self-declaration by a party external to the organization, and certification / registration of its standardization management system by an external organization. And this is the part of the process that F1 will be working on in the future. Okay, a little bit about standardization management system itself. So standards help to enhance product quality and process efficiencies, optimize the variety of goods and services offered by the business, facilitate interoperability of products, processes, and to permit intercompany exchange of information, i.e. sharing of technology through the use of agreed standards. Standards provide people and organizations with a basis for mutual understanding and are used as tools to facilitate communication, measurement, commerce, and manufacturing. Standards are everywhere and play an important role in the economy by facilitating business interaction. Standards also play an important role in ensuring compatibility of products in national and international markets, reducing transaction costs, and providing a signal of quality to customers, thus boosting the export performance and prestige of exporting companies. Standards are used by organizations to demonstrate that their products and services meet agreed criteria and that their processes and principles of leadership and governance are consistent with good business practice. Standards form the basis for the introduction of new technologies and innovations and ensure that products, components, and services supplied by different organizations will be mutually compatible. Okay, so the definition of standardization management taken from BS 22000 para 3 27 is that the through life process that enables the drafting, development and maintenance of standards and the promotion of intelligent selection and implementation of standards, policy, process and tools. And so the graphic below essentially shows what an organisation should be doing internally to improve its standardization management skills. And they are enhanced product and service safety, increased interoperability, improved governance, clear accountability, standards continuously improved through the learning experience. And from externally, that translates to the facilitation of trade. It provides a framework for achieving economies, efficiencies, and interoperability, and enhances consumer protection. And that should lead, and hopefully does lead, to general contract agreement, and therefore money into the business of those selling their goods and wares, etc. Okay, so now I'm going to talk briefly a bit about the construct of BS 22000. As with other British standards, it will have a scope, normative reference, terms of definitions, and then the remaining paragraphs of the standard cover the context of the organisation, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation of the standardization management system. It has 4 annexes. Annex A covering the terms of reference, or the standardization manager's terms of reference, the standardization management committee terms of reference, i.e. DEF 1. Annex C covers recognized levels of competence in standardization management. And then Annex D is the standardization management system requirements. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about Annex C, because clearly these are the recognized levels of competence and what companies and organizations need to do to mark themselves against each of these criteria. So the lowest level, C1 there, is indicators of knowledge and experience. So it's an organization or someone who demonstrates an awareness of the organization's standardization management policy and structure, including the benefits delivered from an effective and efficient standardization management policy. They should also have an understanding of the roles and responsibilities towards standardization management and the various tool sets which control it. So a supervised practitioner is someone who applies the standardization management policy, utilizes the expertise of the appropriate and utilizes the expertise of the appropriate standardization management personnel. They should also be someone who utilizes the SM tool sets, understands appropriate standards pertinent to the business, and supports standardization management activities to ensure compliance with legislation. A practitioner is all of those above, but in an advisory and managerial capacity. An expert is someone who's considered to have all of the above and leads, manages, and authorizes standardization management activities where there's a requirement to comply with UK and international legislation. And somebody who's an authority is someone or persons with an organization or company with many years of experience in standardization activity. Typically, this will be someone who's drawn up and applied standards in a work setting. They will have a member they will have been a member of a standards committee within a standards development organization, such as BSI. They will probably have represented their country or company at standards making meetings. they will be responsible for communicating standardization management best practice across the organization, and they're probably close to retirement because they will have seen many years of service. And then Annex D, that's there for assessing the effectiveness of deployment of BS 22000, which describes self-determination and self-declaration, confirmation of its conformity by parties having an interest in the organization, confirmation of its self-declaration by a party to external to the organization, and then the certification and registration of its standardization management system by an external organization. And that's TBD as far as DEF 1 is concerned, but it's the next thing on their agenda. So assessing the effectiveness of deployment, so Annex D, there are 7 areas of compliance and 42 compliance criteria. So to summarize, BS 22000 supports and guides organizations in the implementation of standardization management system, including assisting organizations to A, understand the requirements of an SMS, and B, identify and implement improvements within an SMS. BS 22000 also enables an organization to use a process approach coupled with the plan, do, check, act cycle and risk-based thinking to align its quality management systems with the requirements of BS 22000. And this very closely relates to and aligns with ISO 9000, ISO 9001, ISO 9004, and within the aerospace sector, AS/EN 9100, the QMS requirements for aviation, space, and defense organizations. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Kish, who will give the remainder of the presentation, and we'll take any questions at the end.
Okay. Thank you, John. So really from John, you've heard about the DEF 1 committee, the build up to how the BS 22000 was designed, the aspects in terms of what is standardization management, and really its structure and content behind the BS 22000. I've got two parts here. One is about competitive advantage, what we have actually put into practice within MBDA, and that's something which has supported designing the BS 22000. And my last section will be about future build of the BS 22000, how we take the current published BS 22000 standard and look at future evolvements. So as I said, so this section is about competitive advantage. And I know people may sort of ask the question, really, is there a clear competitive advantage following the standardization management approach? I can say from the MBDA experience, where I've been part of it for the last 6 years, but we actually put this into place over the last 10, 12 years, it certainly is the case for our business. So in the next few slides, I'll take you through what MBDA has established, its approach to MBDA external standardization management, and how we see this as a clear benefit for the business. Next slide, please, John. Okay, so if I pick up on our position, so if you go back a few years, the challenge we had was we had multiple programs, we still have multiple programs on the go at any one time. And at the same time, with each one of these programs, there are a clear set of standards identified. And those, once you put through those good few hundred contracts, it adds up to a good few thousand standards which we need to comply with. So really, we're in a position where we needed to find an efficient way of actually managing contracts and standards and how we comply to them. So we needed a smart way of working to access, understand, and comply with the standards, whilst looking to minimize the risks and overheads to the business, and not just to the business, but also to our customers. So in the absence of any real structured approach for this at the time, we established a simple management system, which is fairly common when you'd see something like EN 9100, ISO 9001, effectively very much based on the plan, do, check, act approach. A clear policy, some processes, definitions of roles and responsibilities, and the operational steps through clear work streams. And of course, closing that off with some measures. So a clear plan, do, check, act approach. And that's how we sort of saw the challenge and how we started putting together a structure. Next slide, please. So the real point here was, how do we succeed in putting together a management system which supports the business and the challenges we're faced with? So what we did was we identified those enablers. The enablers were really making sure that we could have a clear case in front of senior management of what we wanted to deploy. And getting that high-level business support was really the key area. But with the business support, that's one part. The other part is to manage, to have the resources to manage and deliver on these activities. So management support, the resourcing, and finally, the subject matter experts across the business. So those three areas are the ones we actually see as key enablers for the business. We put together a policy based on that thinking, got the support from management, and the policy was designed in three clear work streams. How do we support individuals? So we call that proximity services. So everybody has access to standards. How do we maintain that business knowledge, that external standards knowledge, and its application in the business, and make sure that we also go out there and influence standards across industry. So that helps industry and it helps MBDA. So this formed the part of our clear policy on external standardization management. Next slide, please, John. So this is our operating model, still in place. As I said, we started this a good few years ago. We have a clear policy and an honor. We have the governance in terms of getting the strategic view, what's needed by this team of individuals across the business to get the best out of standards and standardization management. We have, as I said, the guidance or the strategical view for this work from the MESC, which is the MBDA External Standards Committee. And we have an individual in each country to manage external standards. So effectively what we call a focal point across each UK. And within that is also what we call an external standards panel. So that's effectively manage the day-to-day operations of managing external standards, looking at assessments, looking at subscriptions, etc. And that is really over the three different work streams we've defined at the start. Okay, next slide, please. So if you look at the approach, the three work streams, I said delivering proximity services. This is about making sure that we have standards available to each and every user across the business to make sure that the risk is not there of using out-of-date standards or not being aware of upcoming standards, new innovation, new technology. So we stay at the forefront by having initially just access to standards. And it's not just having access to standards, but also making sure we make people aware of the benefits of standards, the function we have. So a lot of communications across the business, both in terms of awareness and also in terms of training for new users as well as existing staff. The second stream, so the first one, really making sure everybody has access to standards and is fully aware of benefits. The second stream is more about standards knowledge, continually building on our in-house expertise. So the idea is every time you have a contract, what impact will each one of those standards have on your business? What risk will it bring? Will it bring in extra costs? Will there be any challenges in terms of technical limitations or capabilities? So really the second work stream is all about looking at standards and in cases ahead of the standards being in contracts, doing an impact assessment. What does it mean to the business? And really using standards experts across the business to make sure that we can make a valued judgment on that. So that's really the second part. The third work stream is about both looking at getting involved with external committees, looking at ballots, providing feedback to them, standards ballots, and also ensuring that we can actually not just influence standards, but also effectively bring some of that standards knowledge into the business ahead of time. Okay, next slide, please. So that was really a structured approach, our approach, and the benefits it brings. So again, looking at all three of those work streams. First part, proximity services. Every individual within our business of roughly, we're looking at 10,000 employees, has got access to standards, something like 4,000 employees in the UK. And in terms of the number of individuals who tap into the services for standards, you'd be looking at about 30 to 35% of individuals within the business routinely tap into standards. There's no, by having access to standards, a clear subscription from us with our supplier, we make sure that nobody makes assumptions. There's no risks in terms of what they think should be in the standard, but it's there at hand. We have access to all current standards, quite a large family of those, and historical standards to support us in what we have as being fairly long lifetime products, systems. We have within the subscriptions watch lists, so you can be kept informed of standards, updates, changes. We support all users, training, awareness. So that's really the first column in terms of how we actually operate on a day-to-day basis. And then the benefits we get from that, reducing the risks. On the second part, where we are now in a good position and really gives the business a huge amount of benefit, is we've got a clear database of subject matter experts. So if you have a new standard on counterfeit, it comes across to me to do an assessment. If it's on RF technology or artificial intelligence, we have names identified for each not new, but each area of expertise. So a clear database of subject matter experts. We have those same SMEs, subject matter experts, going out to standards committees and supporting those areas. The assessments we do feeds into either bid stages or contract stages. So we can be, in some ways, working very closely with the customer, so we don't actually wait for a standard to be put into a contract, but using the assessments we do, we can work with the customer ahead of time before he actually puts that standard into the contract, and then we end up with long negotiations. We actually try and foresee what's coming up and work with the customer. So that's where the preempting of standards for future contract comes in. Where we're still working to improve further is really our flow down in the supply chain. We have some suppliers who will be effectively of a minimal size, but really specialist suppliers, and we can't impose or flow down all the standards down the chain. So we're looking to find more effective, more optimized ways of actually flowing down the standards within our supply chain. The promoting business interests, I think I've covered this, engagement in external committees, making sure that we look at ballots and feed into that through the SMEs or through working committees. And also we try, and it's never easy, but try and get that optimal balance, which committees we get involved in and not actually end up having 2 or 3 people going in the same committee. Biggest advantage of actually being involved, as I said earlier, is awareness of what's coming up. I can give you a quick example on that. Something like about 8 years ago, I had one of my guys go into one of the committees, and he heard about counterfeit avoidance coming into EN 9100, and we started working on that some time back. 3-4 years ago, we put a policy into place, and it's now fully deployed. But it came in place before EN 9100 made the changes. So it gives us a little bit of time to get the business prepared. Okay, next slide, please, John. So this slide really tries to bring in some measures. I've had to take some of the numbers out as I feel they're a bit sensitive, but we have 5 different areas we report on. This is infographic for last year, looking at access to the tool, how many downloads we have, how many users we have. So that gives us a good indication of what subscription levels we need for the following year. And we review that pretty much on a quarterly basis. How many assessments we need to do, and that ties up with standards and contracts. Assessments planned, assessments completed, and assessment impacts as well. How many expert networks we're involved in, how many SMEs we have. And again, this is actually linked across not just in the UK, but across our 4 netcos, across the rest of the business. Standards and contracts, new contracts, how many standards are referenced, and finally, how many people we've got trained up, including new users and existing staff. So that gives us some measures. They're not perfect, but it's a good start, and this is what we use to report internally to the business. Next slide, please, John. So I've got a couple more slides on this topic. So benefits-wise, I believe if you look at it, some of this has been covered by John earlier on. But if I pick up the key points in here, standards, products, and processes. Key point here is about interoperability of products and processes and dissemination of technology through standards. So if you look at something practically, USB and USB connectors, standard practice, it's a standard used everywhere. It allows you to then not design something which is away from the USB protocol. And that's just one example. So it's getting that consistency which allows your products to be used elsewhere. Trade and export, again, a fairly straightforward one. Everybody asks for ISO 9001 or E9100. It gives a clear indication of a clear signal of the quality or compliance requirements. I don't think there's much to add to that. It just allows you to, it allows some of the, not just the export activities, but internally as well, trading through your customer base. Number 3, development process. I think we talked about it quite a lot. It's anticipating what's coming up in the future, being prepared in terms of what your business might want to expand into in the near future. For instance, what we are heavily into at the moment is data analytics, artificial intelligence, and with artificial intelligence comes in ethics as well. How do you actually deploy artificial intelligence and still maintain certain ethical standards? So we have people within the business who will actually be involved in those committees. Number 4 in the square there, standards as catalyst for innovation. Again, as I said, awareness of new innovation, technology. And again, MBDA is in a good position here. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we got ourselves the certification to ISO 56002. So that's in place, clearly demonstrating that MBDA takes the benefits of standards and standardization very seriously. Next slide, the last slide on this set. Fairly brief one on this one. So this one is about, we talked about benefits we've seen within MBDA. We've actually also been influenced by a white paper we saw from, I think it's about 2015, it says on there, yep. So this was sponsored by the Center of Economics and Business Research together with BSI. And this allowed us to sort of push ahead with some of the challenges we're getting partway, saying what benefits does it bring in terms of continuing to support external standardization management. And this clearly did, this work clearly provided some good backing to see what competitive advantage, what benefits are of standardization management. Definitely worth a read, and I think that can be found on just by Googling on for that particular paper. So that really gives you, I would like to say, a clear view from the MBDA point of view to say that it gives us benefits. And really, what we put together into place in MBDA, we see has been a good catalyst for the BS 22000 design. So that's that part on competitive advantage. Last 2 or 3 slides, thanks, John, is more about the next steps for BS 22000, what we call the future build. So I know the standard has just been published in June, but we see this as a constant, as with any other standard, constant evolution in terms of where do we take it next. Next slide, John. So apologies, this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I think it hopefully gets the message across quite well. So if we start with the Plan, Do, Check, Act approach, which works for all of us, and we start from the center, establish a need. So then we can work clockwise from there. So we talked about the need for the standard and the DEF1 committee, and that a DEF1 committee has actually taken the lead. It was tasked to provide a clear standard for standardization management, and that's been done. So the structure was set up, the standard was developed, and finally in June, it was published. So it's there out in the public domain. So the next step now is really not to sort of say the standard's out there, let's just get on with the next one. It's about how do you make sure it's sufficiently deployed across industry, and not just deployed for the sake of deployment, but to bring in the benefits for those businesses. So the step here now is the communication, the promotion, awareness, and the support. And alongside that would be the development of training, which would be done or pulled together by BSI and DEF1. So following on from getting the training available, clear communications, for instance, like the event today, and industry adoption, is we want to then start getting feedback. And that feedback can actually be pulled together at the DEF1 committee or any of the members within it. And getting this feedback in so we can further improve the standard. What we see as the upcoming steps, which we're already considering, is the DEF1 committee and BSI looking to, well, I suppose it's more the DEF1 committee, looking to see if this could actually end up within contracts. So adoption and inclusion in future contracts. The next stage would also be about certification. How do we formalize the standards deployment and compliance through clear certification? And the following step from there would be how there's a likelihood that this standard doesn't actually just remain as a BS 22000, but more as something which is adopted by ISO, EN, and other external standardization bodies. So this is how we see an evolvement and improvement of the standard. We also have an area which we're looking to explore in the coming months, is how do we take the deployment part? How do people know that what they're putting into place as we're linked up with BS 22000 is actually working and making a difference to their business? So we're looking at what we call is a external standardization management maturity model. So this would actually allow for gap analysis, it will allow for audit activities, both at internal, second party, and third party audits. So this is part of what we call analysis and improvement, and which takes us through the entire cycle. Next slide, please, John. And just bear with me a couple more slides, and then we're done. So we've actually learned from a similar approach by the counterfeit avoidance standard, which is a DEF stand 05135. And what that committee has put together is a counterfeit avoidance maturity matrix. And we're looking to sort of get some sort of inspiration from that to take what we have today in BS 22000 as NXD, as a means of looking at how it's not quite a maturity model, but just looking to assess a level of compliance. What we're looking to do is take the inspiration from the counterfeit avoidance maturity model and build up something similar based on all the requirements for BS 22000. The output from that would really be some sort of a spider matrix, which looks at where you need to be, which could be that red line in the spider chart you see, and how you're compliant with that. Real reason for this is it allows you to do a gap analysis, it allows you to be prepared for audits, and it also allows you to identify, forgetting all those audits and assessments, is how mature your processes are in terms of getting a deployment of a management system for standardization management. So where you see those gaps is where you can focus on. So it gives you the the gap analysis, and an improvement direction. Last slide, John. So it's really a summary in terms of future build. BS 22000 is out there. People can start using it. They can get more information through the communications of this type, the training which will be available in the near future. Get involved in the DEF1 committee, and really make it work for your business to give you the benefits which we have seen, and I'm sure we can learn from other industry to get those benefits into place for your business. So that's largely it from myself. Thank you for listening. I think at this point, both John and myself will take questions. We have had other members who can't be with us today. David, unfortunately, is not well, so he's just come out of hospital. And Harry's got other commitments. So really, we'll field questions both, from yourselves. Myself and John will pick that up. Thank you.
Hi, this is Beverly. I've got a question we received from Paul Robbins. Does the standard for standardization include changes to the standards, double loop learning, ?
I didn't understand the last part. Do you want to just repeat the last part, please?
Okay, does the standard for standardization include changes to the standards, double loop learning?
Okay. John, you want to take that one, or do you want me to try and cover it?
You go ahead, Keisha, and I'll follow up.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So in terms of the standard details, I'm not fully in the details of the BS 22000. I can tell you from our experience within MBDA that what we do is we have effectively watch list in terms of any changes to standards. So if you're talking about changes to standards and contracts, I can cover that part. But changes to standards within the BS 22000, maybe John would be better suited. So yeah, so it's what we do is we track through watch lists through our subscription to see what changes are coming up, and then we look to work with the assessment guys within the business. So basically, the SMEs will do the assessments and say, fine, okay, what impact does this have on our business? And is it a technical risk? Is this something where we need to go back to a customer and say, look, we've got change in the standard. If you want us to adopt them, it's going to be an X £1,000 more, or don't worry about it. You know what? It's routine. We can manage it. So we keep an eye on the standards, and we ensure that we can actually update our processes and work with our customers accordingly. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I have to confess, I'm not familiar with the term double loop learning, but if you're talking in terms of an iterative process whereby the standard will be updated in the light of user experience, then the answer to that is yes, and very much so. And if anybody listening to this presentation or Q&A session wants to get involved in the DEF1 committee, then that would be welcomed. Beverly Webb is probably the BSI contact, and if anybody wants a direct conversation with Harry McLernan, he'd be happy to take those questions.
Yes, I already have an interest in somebody who's interested in joining DEF1, which is great news. I will just type in my email address by the answer to that, and it's worth. But we will follow this up afterwards. And I just wanted to remind everybody, all the attendees, that if you roll over the bottom of your screen and click on Q&A, you can type in any questions into this that we can pick up. But yes, from a DEF1 point of view, we're always interested in anybody participating in committees and bringing in a fresh perspective. So that's great news, and we'll be happy to discuss this with anyone else. I do actually have an answer to the double loop learning It is a concept and process that involves teaching people to think more deeply about their assumptions and beliefs. Wow.
Well, okay.
Well, in that case, I think the answer to that is yes, then, Beverly, because that's what was, that's what the whole concept of BS 22000 what was about, and it was, it was driven by UK Deaf Stand group up in Glasgow, and it was basically, or it will be a mechanism for them to ascertain that that the people who or their suppliers will embrace standardization management, and it's a tool for understanding how competent or otherwise that organization may or may not be.
Okay, do we have any more questions coming in?
Yeah, the other point I'd like to make, Beverly, and I did mention it in one of my early slides, and that is that UK MOD, the standards group, has adopted a mantra called civil as possible and military as necessary, which essentially means that they are now looking to the civil community for standards that they can use within their defence equipment and contracts, and only and where necessary will they be producing new defence standards within the UK. And I know for a fact that concept has been taken to NATO, and they also are adopting it.
Okay, that's great. I don't know that we've got any more questions. Do we have one? So we had somebody holding had their hand up, Lynette. Do you have a question?
No.
No, I don't think we do.
Lynette, I've enabled it so you can unmute yourself if you do have a question and you haven't found the Q&A.
Yeah, no, I don't think we've got that.
If there's no other questions, I would just like to add that I see, I mean, I would say maybe going back about 2 years, we were looking at the standard for standardization, and it's now sort of matured. We've got something published out there for the benefit of businesses. People don't really need to take a full path of certification at this stage, but really they could just follow the guidance from the standard to actually to realize benefits into their business. And if nothing else, it's just to sort of understand, what are you signing up to? What's in your contract? Does that bring risk to your business? Does it bring cost to your business? So there's enough in the standard to provide benefits to the business, what I would call informally. So even if it's a simple management system set up within your business, looking at some of the key points within BS 22000, you'll be able to sort of see that you can minimize risk, you can reduce your time to contract, and also try and sort of foresee what could be coming up as new technology, which you may need to start thinking about, because what you don't want to do is actually sort of not be involved in some of these activities and find that you're left out. It's just staying ahead of the game, bringing in your products, which the future market's coming through on. A lot of aspects on digitalization, you need to be ahead on that. And as I said, so it's nothing there which sort of says you need to follow it to the word, but there's enough in there to work on to bring some competitive advantage to your business, be it informally. That's all I wanted to add.
Hi. Oh, sorry, I have a further question from Paul Robbins. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Standards are part of the system control. to what measures are appropriate to the standardization standards?
Good questions. It takes a bit of thinking about some of these questions. Right. If you wouldn't mind, Beverly, once more, so I can digest it.
Standards are part of the system control. So what measures are appropriate to the standardization standards?
If you're looking at the measures in terms of effectiveness of standardization, that is always a difficult one, and I don't think I've come across any other business which has actually pulled together effectively the benefits drawn by each of the activities. It is somewhat difficult to quantify. What we have put into place, and hopefully that answers the question, is more about what are we doing, how much interest there is in the business, how much pull there is from the business, and how it's supporting us working with our customers. So they're very sort of not easily quantifiable from what we put into place with an MBDA. I don't know if John's got another view on this.
No, it's a very good question, and I'm thinking it's sort of philosophical, and it might be one that BSI might want to think about because it doesn't only apply to the BS 22000 and standardization management. It applies across the standards business as a whole. So I think what we will do is we'll take that offline and we'll respond to that later.
Okay.
But could you make a note of that, Beverly? Because it's a good question, and I think a measured response.
Yeah, okay, done. Do we have any further questions from anybody else? No, I don't think we do. I think that is probably our session over a little bit early.
Early lunch then.
Okay.
Thanks, Beverly. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.